I've been standing on a mountaintop since 2017 about this because I know it's a necessity, and I think damn near every brokerage in America that survives, the ones that do survive and thrive are going to be the ones who have the most ancillary relationships. And I might be wrong when I say this, but I believe mortgage is probably one of the most lucrative opportunities of all of the ancillary relationships. And so you're crazy not to make it one of the first ones you get set up.
The management and transparency is what's very important. So once you submit a referral, you're going to have your own Home Advantage account, and it's going to tell you where everything sits. So if you have 10 referrals that you've sent into the network, it's going to give you all 10 referrals. It's going to tell you every milestone that client is sitting in, whether they're touring homes, whether they're in escrow. And you now can manage through the Home Advantage application as far as what your pipeline looks like for the referrals that you've sent. And so it's pretty sophisticated, and it's all click of a button, guys.
Welcome to those of you joining us on the back end in Zoom. We'll get started here in just a minute. That just a minute is right now. But first, Nick, before I introduce you, I've got to drink this. It's called Magic Mind. It's going to make me a better interviewer, I think. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself. This product, I'm not an energy drink guy, right? I drink coffee. This product, you mix with coffee, you drink it while you're drinking your coffee, and it totally, first time I drank it, I got a little jittery. Ever since then, it just totally makes me more focused. And so they actually sent a bunch of this stuff. My wife bought this. I said, this is cool. I'm going to do an Instagram post. The company reached out, found out I was a podcast host, found out I do all this media, said, we're going to send you a bunch. What if we give your audience a discount code? So Jake is going to put that in here. It's called Magic Mind. It actually tastes good. It's really good. There's your commercial for the day. Now let's bring some value. LabCoatAgents, welcome. Today is a good one, a healthy one, a sexy topic, a potentially profitable topic, and a topic that is near and dear to us. And Nic Stotler, who runs this department, the VP of Strategic Development for USA Mortgage, and heads up the what I would just call setting up joint ventures, setting up opportunities for team leads, for brokers, for anybody who owns a real estate company, the opportunity to have the skin in the game, own a piece of mortgage, and earn revenue on what really they're already directing the traffic on anyway. So Nic, before we get deep into that, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions on this. And if you're joining us today, and if you have questions, put them in the chat. If you're on Facebook, put them in the comments, and Jake will relay them to me. But first, Nic, how about a quick intro? Because you're not a mortgage guy by trade. You came over from the real estate world. So tell us a little bit about your history, and then let's get into the goods.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Jeff. So yeah, I'm a real estate nerd. I got licensed in 2002 and jumped right into selling real estate, back then, and kind of did that for a few years. At some point, jumped on more of the vendor side or corporate side of real estate, spent about 15, 16 years with, at the time, a company called Realogy, which is now called Anywhere. And so, really at Realogy, that's where I really started to understand and learn the brokerage business, especially at the broker level. And, this unique relationship between, brokerages and these independent contractor agents, and how that, kind of all works together, flows together, how it works together. And then in many cases, as we know, sometimes how it doesn't work so well. And so, just really spent a lot of time helping, Real Trends, top 200, 300 brokers, become even more powerful. But at the same time, worked with a lot of up and coming just realtors that were on that path of becoming a high producing real estate agent to a real estate team. And then some of those, as you know, turn into broker owners. So just, I've kind of just lived in that whole dynamic for the last, call it, 18 years or so.
Very nice. Very nice. And so then obviously you got led over to USA to head up this department, which again, it's technically strategic development, right? That's kind of the name of the department, but brass tacks is joint ventures. It's partnerships. And I saw this back in 2017, actually, when I started to get heavily involved with LabCoat, started to make bunch of relationships with a bunch of big brokers across the country. And I think it was really at infancy then. This has always been a thing, but I guess, after Dodd-Frank, pre-Dodd-Frank, there was a lot of under the table. There was a lot of here, just stroke me. Then they really cracked down on that stuff. The CFPB came in, got a lot of teeth, and the JV has always been around. I think it was almost like too compliant for people. It wasn't as easy. And now it is the way. And so let's talk about that a little bit. What kind of led you over to USA? I guess, was that just the conversation? Is that USA was realizing that, gosh, this is where the world is going now?
Yeah. So real quickly, when I left Realogy in 2019, I joined a local real estate company in St. Louis, and I was running that company. And, is when you run a real estate company you're living and dying every week by that P&L and what's happening. So I just noticed that, very early on, we didn't have a title relationship. We didn't have a formal mortgage relationship. And so I went down this path of adding those. And so I added title. We started a title joint venture. And then I started, talking to companies out there on the mortgage side. And most of the companies I talked to really didn't want to do a joint venture. They wanted to do this MSA. From where I sat, though, what really got me excited about joint venture is the transparency of it. You're telling the consumer, you're telling the agent, you're telling everyone involved that you have ownership in this company, and you're very transparent about that. I, as a broker owner, on that side, we all want to make a lot of money, but at the end of the day, we're not in the mortgage business, so we want to make sure we're doing things right, the correct way, right? So that to me is what kind of got me thinking about the mortgage joint venture. And I approached several companies. I found this company, USA Mortgage. What I really liked about USA was they already knew the realtor. That was important, that the company knows day to day what a real estate professional is going through, and that life they're living, and the ups and downs, and of course all the pressure of the transaction over the last couple of years. Just knowing that was important to me. So I also consult a little bit, and everybody I was consulting with, they all needed, title and mortgage. So it was just a good conversation I had with the folks at USA, and they had never done a joint venture, but they had all the great ingredients to be a truly great partner. And before I know it, I'm working for the company. We started a new company under USA called DAS Partnerships, which is the entity that we use for all of our joint ventures. And that's kind of how it happened. It happened very organically, very naturally. And just as I suspected, we're a good partner. And I just think that's so important when you're thinking about any of these strategic relationships at a broker level, or if you're running a high producing agent team. We tend to focus on the software, we tend to focus on the product, but at the end of the day, we need to really focus on the people and the people behind that service. And so what I'm trying to do here at DAS Partnerships is just make sure we're the very best partner out there in the space. So, that's kind of the DNA of it and how it started.
Love it. Love it. And as I mentioned, this has started to become a very hot topic. And a lot of that has just compression of revenue, right? Just all of the various real estate models that have come into play. It's almost becoming a necessity anymore for a real estate company's survival is to create other revenue streams that aren't just real estate. And it's mortgage, it's title, it could be any and every company. But today, obviously, we're going to focus on mortgage. And so it's logical. It makes sense. Although, and I can speak to this, having been in the mortgage industry for 23 years, the mortgage industry, let me just clue you in, real estate industry has a crawl in their ass for real estate agents and brokers, like, oh, they're just going to get their hand in my cookie jar. They're already a thorn in my side. I come from a different place. I come from a place of, I love the hell out of them because, it's a symbiotic relationship. It's necessary. But that's the way a lot of the mortgage industry feels. And so for that, there's not a lot of companies doing this and not only not doing it, but not seeking it. And so let's talk about what this looks like. So you've got this JV model, which requires, which, basically becomes a separate entity that comes in. I'm going to let you explain this. And now they become a partner in a P&L. And you grow a branch together, correct? You grow a mortgage business together.
Yeah. So each one of these, we're starting a new company, a new entity, a new company. And so we're bringing together, our company, DAS Partnerships, and we are partnering with, a real estate brokerage or a high producing real estate team or a group of real estate teams. There's no rules here in terms of who the owners are, but obviously we're doing this in the spirit of maximizing these relationships at the transaction level or the kitchen table, right? So we're going into business together. We're forming a new brand, we're forming a new company, and then we're going to have employees to that company. So, I think the key, especially from a RESPA perspective, is that we're doing this all fresh and new, and it's separate, right? There's a wall that's separate from us or separate from at the local level. So we're starting this new company, and then really the idea here is that this is a type of business where, I think at the real estate level, you want to maximize those relationships, right? That your realtors have. And so you're helping to create a platform at the local level that makes it very easy at the end of the day for for that relationship at the kitchen table to move over to this joint venture company. And so that we can service those consumers. And our real estate partners enjoy that too, because they have a business, they have a core business that they need to focus on, and that's taking care of these consumers and these agents. And so what we're doing on the joint venture side or the DAS side is really the heavy lifting of running this brokerage business. All right, and we are allowing those partners just to continue to do their thing at the local level. And having said that, it's very collaborative. We are not looking to tell our partners what to do. We are setting these up in a way that we are truly running these as a partnership. And that's why, I always tell people this is, we want to date our partners a little bit. We want them to date us. This isn't one conversation and then we're jumping into some sort of, great relationship. We want to date a little bit, make sure that we're, we can collaborate, we can work together. And I think, like any other relationship, after a few meetings, you kind of know, we all do our homework. And then after that, we're finding a great loan officer at the local level, and we're doing that together. We at, DAS, we really rely on our joint venture partners to kind of start that, because at the local level, we feel like they already have those relationships. It doesn't make sense for us to come in to an entirely different market and dictate who that loan officer is. But we all know, though, there's nothing like a great loan officer. So we certainly want to take our time and find that right person.
Yeah, I love that. And so let me clarify that. So it's not an absolute necessity, because we've seen it done a variety of ways, but usually the most successful businesses that are created are ones that the real estate company leverages their resources, their agents, their local connections to find a loan officer who's probably excited about this opportunity, for one, because again, mind you, and I've seen this many, many times, where a real estate partnership says, oh, this will be easy, we'll go grab a loan officer. And then they find, oh gosh, this wasn't as easy as I thought, because a lot of loan officers just come in very defensive to this type of setup. And then there are some that come in excited as can be, because they see the opportunity that potentially exists here. So it works best when the real estate company finds and vets the local LO, and then USA Mortgage also does various levels of interviewing as well to kind of support that, because we're going to probably ask some different questions. But it's not the only way, right? I mean, there is, if you don't have any success, you can employ recruiters and that sort of thing. Correct? It's just like a traditional recruiting.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the benefits of having DAS partnerships. We have this great joint venture department, or the other, we also have a whole retail, part of our company that we can lean on and we can use. So to your point, we're actually, I'm in a market right now, and that's what the meeting about was today, is that they did not have a loan officer. So we are putting in a recruiting strategy. We're utilizing our recruiting team at USA Mortgage. They're going to come in, do some analysis on the entire market. We're going to come up with a list of loan officers. And then together, we're going to start courting those folks and just, good old fashioned coffees at Starbucks and having some meetings. And the other part that I think is important is once we get a company and we feel comfortable with each other, it's important that once we do identify that loan officer, that we are bringing that loan officer, into our headquarters as well. Because we have to sell them too. Like, in many cases, they're coming from a great situation. So we have to help them better understand that not only will they have great value and have access to all these agents, maybe like they did before, but they also need to understand in terms of the good old fashioned tech and everything they need to be a great rock star loan officer, that they're going to get that with this new relationship and this new company. So all of that's a process, and we work hard to make sure that they're very comfortable throughout that.
And let me be clear too, and say this, because we're going to continue discussing this in greater detail, is that, and the question that I've heard a lot over the years is, how much work is this going to be for me? And the reason I bring this up now at this point in the conversation is because that really is the extent of the work that goes into this. Besides really just being a cheerleader for the business once it's created, really, I think the hardest part is finding the right LO. And once you find the right LO, it can be very, very fruitful, because, by the way, it's not just bring in LO works the office, gets as much business as possible. It's also potential outside relationships they have with other brokerages and other agents and whatnot. So it all flows in. And so as I bring that up, I know one of the questions is always, well, what about the LO comp? Is the LO comp going to be comparable to maybe where they came from, or comparable to the market? How do you answer that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and when I say it's a great question, it's typically, number one or number two top questions. And I think, so first of all, we are starting a new company, right? So we get to make business decisions. So there's really no rules. We get to come together as partners and make business decisions. So we can make whatever comp decision we want to make at the local level. Where I think most of these are structured, not only within our company, but just kind of knowing the industry and the joint venture space, they're actually, the comp is a little lower for the LO. And the reasoning for that is, they have a platform where a lot of the business is really just coming to them. Okay. So we structure the comp a little bit lower for that. But we always give those LOs the ability to get paid, what the market bears for a typical comp, LO out there who's a hunter gatherer for business that they bring in. So typically it's a mix or a balance between the business that's kind of being fed into the joint venture versus, those LOs that are great hunters and can bring in those deals. We want to compensate them at the typical level or the standard level that's appropriate for that. So we, to answer your question, Jeff, we balance it. It's a mix on all of these.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe to just articulate that slightly different, the comp that, very simply, the comp on self-source business is typically what their comp is currently. The comp on inbound business, AKA from the brokerage, is usually reduced. And that's actually industry standard. It's like a lead. And so exactly. It's not uncommon. Okay. So let's digress for a second. Let's go back and just talk about, okay, now what does it take? What does it cost? You mentioned it's a separate entity. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I think, one of the biggest differences between the joint venture conversation that we're having right now today versus the one that someone might have had, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago is, the entry into this is I think pretty easy compared to, in the past. So, essentially what we're looking for is to bring, capital to the table from both sides. That's going to get us through, month 1, month 2, month 3, right? Those first 2 or 3 months are crucial, that we want to bring enough capital. Kind of the beauty of a joint venture, though, is you're plugging into, a company, right? Or a high producing agent team that has business coming in day one, typically. And depending on who your loan officer is, that person's probably bringing in their self-source business day one. So we feel really comfortable that in a month or two, if we're doing this correctly, that we are, at least putting ourselves in the position that we're breaking even and not bringing more capital to the table. So to answer your question, most of these we're starting are anywhere from, 50,000 up to 100,000 total and that's split between the two joint venture partners. So in most cases, both parties are bringing about $25,000, to the table. Keep in mind, from a licensing law perspective, some states require that this new entity have so much, capital in an account. So we're covering that and just covering the first few months. And so it's relatively, I think, a low barrier of entry in terms of, if you think about, if you're going to go out there and start a company or buy a coffee shop or something, I think it's relatively an easy business financially for these folks to get into.
1,000,000%. If you try to go do a mortgage company on your own, it's going to cost you a lot of X's, a lot of X on top of that, not to mention the risk that goes along with it. So, okay. So somebody says I'm all in. Okay. Now I know what I have to do. I have to form an LLC. It's going to be a separate entity. I know that there's going to be some startup of 50K. We're going to split it. The split. Did you mention the split 49-51? Is that, did you say that already?
I did not know, but yeah, thank you. So we, have a standard split, 51% to our side, 49% to the joint venture side. Kind of the reason for that is not so much that we are trying to get that extra couple percentage points. The reason is from a RESPA perspective, we feel more comfortable having the control, because keeping in mind, we're doing the majority of the heavy lifting on the operational side of the business. So that's kind of the reason for that. And we have a standard operating agreement that our company has. We have kind of an onboarding process that goes along with that. And so, typical time frame from this first meeting I typically have with people to the time we're actually, launching their new business is typically anywhere from 2 to 4 months. There's typically attorneys on both sides just looking at that operating agreement. So there's a little time that gets lost in that, although very important that we do that. So it's something that doesn't need to take 2 years to put together. I think in at the most 6 months, you can have a company ready to go. We handle the branding and the go-to-market look and feel of the new company. We don't have to, but we certainly, one of the attributes of our company is we have a marketing team of about 21 people that they know the real estate world very well. We pump out over 5,000 pieces. Over 5 million pieces for about 5,000 agents around the country. So we have a great team of people that can help with all the brand creation. We do that very quickly. So relatively speaking, this is a very sophisticated company that we launch rather quickly.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so all right, once we get to this point, and let me also just let me say this for anybody who's on now, listening now, may not make it to the end. If you want a deeper conversation about this, just shoot me a DM. Just DM me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'd be happy to set that up with you guys to go deeper. We'd ask you for some numbers. We'd put it into a pro forma. We would have a deeper conversation about this. And so
Hey, Jeff,
yeah, please.
I just got to say something really quick because I think this is important. I think there's a lot of folks that have the joint venture conversation too late. Not too late, but my point is, like, it's a conversation you want to have early. Even if your company's not ready, even if you don't have the volume, I think it's a good exercise just to kind of learn how it all works, go through that process. And so when you are ready, you are maximizing every transaction that comes through the door, if that makes sense. I talk to a lot of companies and their volume that they have, they could have probably done a joint venture 2 years ago. And for whatever reason, they just didn't get to it. And so I just encourage people, we love to have conversations and teach and be a resource. And if you're not ready, we'll tell you, like, hey, we'd recommend keep doing what you're doing. Maybe try an MSA for a few years. And when you get there, let us know. So didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to make that point.
Actually, it's a great point. I'm glad you said it, because if I had a nickel for every conversation I've had over the last 5 or 6 years, and then by the time it happened, it's like, gosh, had we just started that several years ago, imagine how far along it'd be. Which leads me to, which is a great segue to, all right, what's the reality of actually making money here? How many roughly, and obviously there's different dynamics to all of this, but I've seen enough pro formas to know that this can be run on very, very slim. It can be done. You can get to a profitable place with not a lot of loans. So talk a little bit about that. Obviously everybody's going to understand volume differences. And if you don't understand this, a mortgage transaction, very different from a real estate transaction, whereas a real estate transaction is typically pretty cut and dry when it comes to revenue. On a mortgage transaction, you can literally have the exact same loan, government, conventional, whatever, same same purchase price, same loan amount, same borrower, specifics, everything. And one loan could make $5,000 and the next could lose $5,000 because there's so many dynamics that can just turn something upside down that doesn't exist in the real estate side. So let's talk a little bit about, the possibility of revenue and what that could look like. Let's just say for, starting from maybe, 0 to 5 loans on up to 10 to 20 loans a month.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot that goes into that, but certainly I'll keep this very, very high level. But if, just on a typical, loan value, a company doing 3 to 5 loans a month is going to, in most cases is going to, cover the cost of this whole business. Okay. And what we're doing too is, we kind of have this balance of we're very entrepreneurial as a company, but we're very conservative as a company. We have that balance, which I think is very good to have a joint venture partner, because we want to make money, but at the same time we want to do this the right way. So, but we run these lean, to your point, and so companies are typically profitable, making money at that 5 loan a month on up. Obviously, the value of the loan plays into that, but certainly when you're getting to the point where you're moving 10 loans, 20 loans a month through this platform, I won't comment specifically on the amount you can make. I'd say that for a more appropriate call. But what I will say is, running a real estate brokerage, it's enough to make life a lot easier. Running a real estate brokerage without ancillary services, I kind of compare it to, kind of swimming, but your head's bobbing up and down. Like you're not a good swimmer, right? You're kind of going up above the water and down. Like that, running a brokerage that way, it is very challenging. I think when you're getting to 15, 20 loans a month, now all of a sudden, you have revenue coming in that other entity that's allowing the brokerage, to really stay neck above water, right? And then now you're starting to build, you get 20, 30, 40 loans a month. Now all of a sudden this is becoming a piece of the overall brokerage asset that you really cannot operate without. Like you're, in some cases, paying yourself now, you have a source as a broker owner, you have a source of income that's making this business worthwhile. Because with the company retained dollar, where we're at as an industry right now, there's even some mid to large brokerages out there that without ancillary services, it's really tough to make a profit. So this can be what makes this business worthwhile, if done correctly, is having these ancillary sources. It's crucial, in my opinion.
100%. And so since you mentioned that, and obviously it's really hard to get, very granular and detailed on that, but I will say, first of all, it's not nearly as easy as you think it is. The concept is relatively easy and should be executed, in my opinion, by every brokerage. Why not? To call it easy to make revenue would be just silly. But the possibility of making an ancillary revenue stream into the 6 figures at just your percentage is very realistic. I will just say that. Yep. And this is, basically helping start it, helping find the right people, and then it kind of just takes over from there and it gets run itself. So as we talk about that and you get into the nuances, obviously those questions become, well, what happens when there's loan issues? What happens when, obviously we're late to closing, things like that. Am I going to be dealing with these problems? Am I going to be answering questions about how to structure a loan? Who are the processors? Who are the loan officer assistants? Who are the underwriters? Who are the closers? Do I have to worry about all that stuff?
No. So I think that's the beauty, from a day-to-day perspective, consumer, application, loan officer, processors, that whole dynamic, the brokerage partner does not need to be in that space, certainly not day to day. So the way these have been designed is that we are, we are taking care of all of that dynamic at our side of the partnership. Okay. Now, there's some different ways we can do that based upon the size of the amount of loans coming in. We have a separate company that we formed called DAS Services that can handle the processing and work at the DAS side. If the joint venture is large enough, has enough loan volume, then the joint venture is going to hire its own people to handle all of that. So, so we have that covered. And I think that's the beauty of this business. I think that there again, back to our earlier comment, it's a business that you own that you can still be highly 100% focused on your core business and have great confidence that your other business that you have a 49% stake in is being run and managed by folks that are doing this across the country at a really high level, meaning the folks at USA Mortgage.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, it's not just a mortgage relationship. That's one of the things that I find fascinating. And in my relationship to real estate, which I'm far more entrenched in real estate than I am mortgage anymore, the conversation is usually about value. It's can you be an extra value piece to teach our agents about social and video? And then I bring up, oh, and by the way, we have a marketing department that is basically like a Kinko's met a ad agency. And that's designed to support real estate agents. And most of the realtors that I come across or real estate companies are just like, well, holy crap, like, why haven't we worked together sooner? And so that's another piece of this, right? It's not just, obviously this is all about making money. I'm not naive. But when you actually look and you dig a little bit deeper, we have real estate partners that once they sign on with using our marketing department for print. In fact, it's a funny story. I interviewed a gal named Janine Sasso, who's based out of Chicago. She does over 50,000 mailers a year. And we just did another interview with her. I've done 2 now with her. And the second time I brought up to her about our marketing department, because she's spending, it's like 20 grand a year. It was like 25 grand a year. And I was like, you're spending what? And I'm like, and I started doing some math and I'm like, if you did this with us, the total spends like 8 grand and that's before splits. Yep. And her head about fell off of her shoulders. And she's like, all right, let's schedule a meeting right away. That's the additional stuff here. So
can I,
yeah, please.
Let me just say, I think going back to my time, running a local brokerage, you have to run a brokerage very lean as well. And so, you typically, if you're lucky, you have 1 marketing person, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you're really lucky, but your staff is lean and mean. And so if you can be partnered with another entity that has an entire marketing, keep in mind, we're in the business of marketing homes. Marketing should be the number 1 value proposition, in my opinion, at a local real estate brokerage. Like, that is our core business. And so when you find yourself running a brokerage and you're light on marketing, if you can have a partner that can bring marketing firepower that your staff can take advantage of it, that can really move the needle in the value proposition you have at a local brokerage. The other point I'll make too is, running a real estate brokerage or a high producing team, you can get lonely really quick. I love LabCoats because it's this community of great folks in the profession, but you can still get lonely. So I always think about, we're a company too. USA Mortgage has 1,000, employees. We have offices all around the country. We're operating in every state but one. So you not only have a partner in the mortgage business, you have a partner that's in business, that's also running, a sophisticated business. So being able to lean on that partner for just business topics in general is also, I think, a great value add that you get with this relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. Is there anything that I left out? Is there any questions that I didn't ask you that you feel like would be pertinent here? I think the really, 30,000 foot view is how relatively easy this is. What is the time frame or timeline if somebody, was a hand raiser and said, man, I want to do this. Now, how long will it take us to put this plan into motion from a licensing, perspective because obviously forming an LLC is what it is. That's on you. Finding an LO, that's going to be is what it is. But those two things aside, assuming they're already in place, how long does this take to get set up?
Yeah, I think typically, this 3.5 to 6 months, I think is the sweet spot. I obviously we try to get this closer to the 3 months, 3.5 months. There's a few things out of our controls, we're getting licensed from state to state. So there's a portion of this where an application is going to a state and you don't have control over that. I mentioned earlier, sometimes just, the little tweaks that attorneys are going to make back and forth on the operating agreement, that can take some time. And so there's a few things that are out of our control, but for the most part, and by the way, we're getting really good on our side at speeding these along. We have a process. I think that 3.5 month is a good target. Just sometimes it takes a little bit longer. The one thing I wanted to add, though, Jeff, you asked kind of one thing maybe that, did you cover everything? I just believe right now the name of the game in the brokerage business, whether you like this or not, is recruiting. And just, there's just this constant recruiting. I first entered the business, it was almost like brokers had this handshake agreement that they would recruit. Today, that's not the case. Today, every agent out there is getting recruited. And I think recruiting and retention are one and the same, by the way. Like, you're recruiting people, but you're having the same activity on retaining. So I think, where I get excited about the joint venture is how a broker or an agent, a large agent team, can put this in their recruiting and part of their overall value proposition and platform, and help attract, top quality professionals out there to come to their company. And I think it's a value add for those agents to have a company that has this other mortgage ancillary, platform and title as well, and insurance as well. I think it's a value add. I also just throw out there that, from an ownership perspective, we have, many brokerages that want to bring some of their agents in on, at some level, ownership into this. And you certainly can do that. So, I think the future is, how do we leverage our ancillary platforms in a way that helps us be better recruiters and helps us retain our people.
Yeah. You know what? And that did bring up one more thought too, is from a brokerage perspective, as you start creating that revenue stream, how you use that revenue. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. I mean, yeah, it can go straight to the pocketbook, but you can use that in ways to maybe enhance the agent's experience, or maybe even set up some sort of rev share with agents, correct?
Absolutely. So, we, to your point, when we look at P&L, sometimes I see people's eyes light up, and they just they bought a new vacation home and a new car, but at the same time, I think most of our partners are doing and thinking through exactly what you just said. How can we take this revenue that we're generating from this business? How can we plug that back into our organization on the brokerage side to help grow that? And then it's kind of a full circle, right? How does that then feed back through our ancillaries platform? So I think brokerages today are getting very sophisticated on how they use these ancillary services just to grow the organization overall, right? And I think that's where it's at, by the way. I think that's the real reason you should be looking at this platform, is to figure out how it lives in your overall growth strategy.
Yeah. Totally agree. I love it, man. So I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in learning more, you're interested in setting up a very specific call to just talk shop about what your operation is like, or just have some questions that are very specific to your brokerage, just shoot me a DM. I'm happy to connect with you and talk about it. Facebook or Instagram is easiest. And if the interest is there, we'll set up a call with Nic and even the CFO of the company, who then would walk you through a pro forma and show you the numbers based on what you would give to him. And there's a lot of possibilities here, and there's a lot of opportunity. And you said it best, man. In fact, I texted a buddy of mine who we've been talking about this for years, and said, you just continue to kick the can down the road on this, and you don't make time for it, there is probably going to come a time that you do. And so why not just figure out a way to make a little bit of time to put this together? Because time is money, and you're just burning the opportunity at this point. So, Nic, I appreciate you being on, man.
Sure.
It's hopefully we're going to have a lot of more conversations about this. I've been I've been standing on a mountaintop since 2017 about this, because I know it's a necessity. And I think damn near every brokerage in America that survives, the ones that do survive and thrive are going to be the ones who have the most ancillary relationships. And I might be wrong when I say this, but I believe mortgage is probably one of the most lucrative opportunities of all of the ancillary relationships. And so you're crazy not to make it one of the first ones you get set up.
Yeah, I agree. We're excited about it. We're excited about the conversations. We're excited about the partnerships. We're looking forward as we continue to add partners and grow both of our operations together. It's a lot of fun. And I just think, like you said it best, I just think this industry is going into a place where, we all need to be maximizing our time, being as efficient as we can running our businesses, but really being very tuned in to any opportunities out there that help our organization grow. I just think that's what we have to do moving forward in the industry. And but we should be having fun while we do that. Is kind of the way I look at it.
Love it, man. Thank you, brother. We'll be talking. In fact, if we have a call this afternoon with one in the state of Nebraska, so we're gonna continue having these conversations. If you want to get in on this, just connect and let's go from there. Thanks, brother.
Talk soon, guys. See ya.
Yeah.
Bye. Thanks.